So, hello and welcome back. For you guys, it was 1 week. For us, it was only a couple of seconds. We are back with the Improvement Season podcast with me, Pascal Steve, and on the other end, it is Steve Hall. This time, I think, Steve, now we have a little bit of time for chit-chatting, and you're more than welcome to talk a little bit about your tattoo if you want to.
It's funny you mentioned last time about like vegans always bring it up, because Charlotte would tell you like I almost take I try and on every occasion I try and talk about tattoos. It's something it will calm down over time, and I'll get like less just kind of I get, this is what I'm like, this is my personality. I get into something and I'm like fully into it, and I'm just like obsessed. I want to talk about it all the time.
I can't blame you for this, Steve. I'm the same way. I mean, honestly, okay. Sometimes I talk to Katie and I think that she just switches off, and this is all right. I think it's absolutely all right to have a healthy relationship where the other one is just like listening, even though that they are not really listening, right? They are just like there for you to have someone to talk to. Yeah. This sounds very, very desperate and lonely, actually, but it isn't. But there are just certain things that she has no idea about. I'm very passionate about talking with her about it, and she has no idea what words come out of my mouth. It's as if I talk a different language then.
I think that's absolutely fair to say, that I unfortunately do that more regularly than I would like to admit to Charlotte, where I just I try and engage and I'm just like, oh man, it's too much already. I can't keep going. So I'm just like, okay. But I'm pretty sure she does the same with many fitness things with me. So yes, I got a tattoo. So those watching can kind of see here. Roughly see what's going on. So it's down the hand, all up the forearm, but I still have this gaping hole, which I need to probably fill at some point.
I feel you on this one.
The forearm's got a lot of fucking stuff. Like it's a big area. I didn't realize.
I'm just like, always impressed on how quickly black and white tattoos are done. Like when you posted that, like, this was one day, and I was just like, holy shit, just like, one of my figures or like characters took like 2 to 3 days most of the time.
Yeah, he said if I had done this in color, it would have probably taken him twice as long. Yeah. So he said it would have been done over 4 sessions. So this was done 2 sessions, about 11 hours of tattooing. So the second session was literally, I handled it way better this time, which was really nice. So if anyone's like, I don't know, they haven't had a tattoo or they're thinking about their first one, like if that one, like for me, that one, I don't know, it's like any experience in life, but I was like, I passed out in that one, and like it was several occasions like went white, and it was quite an uncomfortable experience for some of it. Whereas this time around, it's just like from the get-go, it was absolutely fine. So I think we only took like that 6-hour session. There was like 2 10-minute breaks at most. And I'm just impressed. Like tattoo artists, I've got huge respect for them. It's unreal what they do. So...
The way that they're crouched over and then focusing on that, because they have to be very, very focused. You can't allow to not be focused, because otherwise you just mess it up. And it's not that you can't fix it like very, very quickly if you like completely mess it up. I'm certain that I have like places where they thought like, shit, what did I just do? I don't let it impact me at all, and he will probably not realize that. Probably. I would very much assume that this already happened.
It's just incredible to me that they can do that. And then it's been, I said this to one of my clients, it's been nice just having, it's probably you and more recently getting more into motorbikes. Like it was quite a new kind of interest in life. And for me, it's been the same way, where it's just been like, I don't know, like Marvel anime films and like bodybuilding, and I just didn't have many interests. Whereas now I'm like, oh, it's a nice like cool little side interest that I can have more knowledge on and talk about.
I think it's good to have something like this, because you can't really be overly obsessed the entire time about bodybuilding. We've talked about it so often already. You can still be passionate, but you don't have to actually then look up bodybuilding news like 24/7.
Yeah.
Yes, let everyone know that you're passionate, but passion doesn't mean that you are just like, once again, consumed by it and just check this one the entire time. There are so many lovely things out there in life. And I think it's always good to have like a catalyst, a different interest that has nothing to do with that field as well.
Yeah.
Also to meet other people, right? And get out of your echo chamber and kind of small little bubble.
Yeah. It was cool. Like, yeah, it's nice even, and I'm sure you have this with the people that have done, I don't know if you've had multiple, I imagine you have had multiple tattoo artists, maybe you haven't, maybe it's been all the same person, but you get to know them as like an individual and like where they've been in life, and you're chatting to them for, well, it depends how chatty they are. The first guy was way more chatty than this guy who just was recent, but they're both really cool, different individuals. So
thing is though, I actually, so when I was young, I always felt the need of actually chatting to them because I was unconfident. In this situation, uncomfortable, and also not really confident with myself. And whenever there was kind of a quiet moment, I felt the need to say something. And if you really think about it, it is a tattoo artist who's doing his job. And if you want to do your job properly, you need to not chat and concentrate. And I've heard from many, many people, so many tattoo artists, because I was in that scene way more so like back in the days, that they actually appreciate and want their clients to get their, I don't know, their notebook with them or their smartphone and just watch something and be quiet so that they are distracted, and that so the tattoo artist can do their job like in the most concentrated manner, which makes sense.
I was just very conscious to try and be like respectful in terms of like, I'd let the artist dictate when they want to talk. So if he asks me something, I'll chat. If not, I'll let it go. And I'll just be, like I said to you, I was just on my phone. Like someone asked, like, what do you do for 6 hours? And I was like, well, had my phone and I was just like on social media, answering emails. I checked over like, I think like 45 minutes, or actually it was like an hour of form videos. So I was just watching it and making notes. I was like, this is great. I could just do this here. The
unfortunate thing is that it was one of your arms, right? So
yes.
Would be much better to actually have something like, I don't know, the back or so. You can just lie there and do something on your notebook.
Yeah, you could properly do stuff. It was, now I'll let this one settle, go down. It's Shenron and Vegito for people who are not sure. And it's making me, so far I've had 2 tattoo artists who have been great, but I realized I kind of went about it in a bit of a backwards way, in that I found the parlor that had great reviews, and then I just inquired with the parlor, and then they have artists. Whereas I have realized, and I imagine you thought this as I was doing it maybe, most people go to the artist and they find their work and then they go through that. Whereas I did it very novice way, where I didn't kind of know that. So now I'm following loads of anime tattooists, and there's quite a few in London, and I'm like, I like this guy, and I maybe think about him doing the next piece. But maybe I'll go to like someone who gets it and they know that this is Vegito and not Goku. You know what I mean?
But this is something that you will first realize once you went through the process, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because my first tattoos, once again, I had no idea. I just wanted a tattoo. I didn't even know that there are different styles of tattoo.
No.
You know? That's how clueless I was when I began. And it's just making it or getting your feet wet. And once you're in that process, you are getting a little bit more involved, getting a little bit more interested. And then kind of the entire world opens up in front of you. And ever since then, a lot has changed as well. I mean, I'm now 34.
The machines have changed.
Yeah.
Sorry, for you.
I still remember those machines were like big and clunky. Now they have like more like pens.
It's free. No wires now.
It's exactly.
Wireless.
And a lot has changed, but this is also due to it, or that there was a time where it was very, very popular of getting a tattoo. And because of that, of course, bigger brands, bigger investors are pouring a lot of money into that field as well. And the same we went through with the fitness industry as well.
Yeah.
There was just like a massive surge in just like interest in getting fit. Right? We saw that with the brands of like Gymshark, MyProtein, stuff like that. They became huge, right? Huge. And because of that, there has been then a development about like protein meals and all that kind of stuff, fitness clothing. And now you can get amazing stuff in that realm as well. And this was only possible because it was like trending at some point.
Yeah. I think how crazy it is, like in Lidl, they have their own brand of like protein pudding. It's just like, what? Yeah. Like 5 years ago, this would not have been a thing. Or like protein ice cream. That's been around a while, but like when I first got into this, it was like you could get unflavored protein powder. That's what there was. Yeah. It's like, this is awful.
Exactly.
And protein bars were like disgusting.
Expensive as hell. Right.
So it's that's been my most exciting thing. So I'm just deloading still this week. I'm considering going and doing a bit of leg work today, just to just do something. Like it's quite hard just being on my own in the house, and like taking Ada for a walk is okay, but it's nice to, like, I don't know, see someone at the gym, talk to them a little bit, get out, do that. So I might go and do a bit of a light deload session today. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I've got the rest of this week deloading, pretty boring. Your injuries, they've been, last time I spoke to you, they're better, but not
getting
quite.
better. Yeah, the wrist is, I would say, like 70 to 80% there already. So today I was already doing kind of heavy pressing now. Heavier, not the same loads that I've been using before the injury, but I'm getting there. I still need to be a little bit careful, but as long as my wrist is actually getting up there again, I'm totally fine. Because once again, just as a quick reminder of what I already mentioned the last time, the main focus for me is the upper body. And as long as the upper body works, hey, the lower body can actually then be put a little bit on the back burner, especially because my ankle is still, it doesn't really feel good, but it's probably also due to walking. It always is kind of a moving part, so it doesn't really get the rest that it would need in comparison to something like the wrist. You can easily just relax the wrist, and just sitting at your desk and doing something, the wrist isn't really that much involved to begin with. So yeah, as long as this heals up, perfect. Right, because then I will hammer and really, really go for the upper body, because that run needs to actually get bigger.
I imagine as well, just thinking how tiring leg training is. Like when you just put the legs on the back burner, I can't even imagine. I could see you getting into close to 30 sets for some of the upper body, possibly. Like,
oh yeah, I have to be careful though, not to overdo it and add too much junk volume, right?
Sure.
Because I need to still listen to my biofeedback markers from week number 1 to week number 2, where I can just feel like, all right, here, 7 sets for the chest in this session was great. So I don't actually need to add more or so, right?
Yeah, don't get carried away.
But at the same time, because of the systemic load that lower body sessions most of the time have, you can probably ramp it up quite aggressively without any kind of, at least, systemic cost to it. Perhaps though wear and tear injuries could creep up more so, and also the likelihood of you doing a little bit more junky volume for then the upper body is increased as well. But at the same time, why not give it a try, right? Because if you are always living in a world of being afraid of something, just the thought or the anticipation of something being wrong or not good without ever having tried it, maybe you miss out on something, right? So that's, once again, I always bring it up. I'm a huge fan of experimentation. And I think, and this is something where I've been victim to this kind of thought or train of thought myself, is overthinking things when I haven't even tried it. And I see it in the evidence-based community more so than in any other community, of like thinking too much, doing too little. Right? Not doing too little in the sense of like volume, because I still believe that many people do a lot of volume, but thinking too much about potential consequences, whether X is better than Y. And you're thinking more than actually taking action. And you're thinking more than actually going in there and just like crushing it hard. And I know how kind of bro-ish and meathead like it sounds, but I mean, this will probably get you better results than thinking, right?
So it's funny because so often I'll get those sort of questions where I'm kind of like, like roll my eyes and I'm like, try it and see. It's one of those things you don't know unless you try. Mm-hmm. Like you have to now and then like push your limits. You have to now and then like see if something's going to work out or not. See if this exercise is better than this one, or like if you can recover from this amount of volume or whatever it is. You're completely right. It's a like one of that typical paralysis by analysis, where people are just like, there's so much information, they're so unsure if they're doing the perfect action, and this is why it's so important to realize it's fine to strive for perfection, but know you're never gonna know or ever get to perfect, because it's a pie in the sky concept that you just can never know about. So, yeah, well said. And
I feel like the evidence-based community has lost the sense or listening to their body. And once again, many of the things that we're talking about are things that we have gone through ourselves or have been victims of ourselves. And they have lost the sensation or the sense of listening to their body, the signals that the body is giving them, because they are so occupied with thinking about or reading the next PubMed and all that kind of stuff. This is, of course, an over-exaggeration, but instead of just like sitting down for 1 minute and just like, how do I even feel? Was this set productive? Instead of thinking like, so when X and Y equals blah, blah, then I add one more set and stuff like that. And just, once again, listen to your body, and the body will probably be able to tell you whether something has been productive or not, for example, right? Or whether it's a good idea to just increase something or maybe even decrease on other parts. And then especially, this is something that Brett Freeman, the Netty News guys have brought up and kind of challenged over the past couple of weeks, is like people don't really train that hard to begin with. And this is not like a dick measuring contest of like, I'm training harder than you. No, it is more like a fact that is being stated, because if you just do those fundamental principles and you actually really make sure to push it, right, then you are probably going to grow. And all of the other things are just like small minor things that you can tweak or think about like later down the line. But I think that for the vast majority of people who haven't put in like 5 to 10 years of training, they don't need to think about those small minor details. And maybe get a coach for someone who then needs to think about this, so that you can solely focus on the things that really get you further.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing personalized service that will take your physique and knowledge to the next level. If you're interested, check the description and sign up.
Yeah, it's that old missing the forest for the trees, and there's some key basic things you've got to get right consistently to grow, and the minor things that can sometimes be overly obsessed about are minor and they're not going to make the difference. But if you so much focus on those minor things that you end up not hitting the big rocks, you're not going anywhere. You're spinning your wheels, and you're going to be confused to as why, because you think you're nailing all the minor things and you're doing so well. It's like, well, you're actually just not really training that hard, or what have you. You're not sleeping well.
I mean, just take you as an example, Steve. Whenever you're posting like a lift, for example, you can really see the intensity and how you're fighting to move that weight and to keep things in control and all that kind of stuff, right? And once you're approaching 2, 3, 4 RER, maybe even sometimes 0 RER, you can really tell like, holy shit, he's fighting here. He's fighting, but he's going for another rep, right? And another rep. It's not that you're just like, all right, yeah, things got a little bit hard and now I'm stopping the set. You can really tell from the outside that it was like a 2 or 3 or 1 RER or something like that. Whereas, to be fair, when I'm watching over the phone videos, a lot of times it's like, you have probably much more in you. Right? I can't even see that you've been fighting in your facial expression. If you really push to a 3 RER, then you can even see it in your face. There needs to be a fight going on inside of you, but also from the outside. Someone should be able to tell, like, you're fighting hard for this repetition here. And if you're not, then you're far away from the given RER.
It's that intent every single moment in the set. You have to be intent throughout. Otherwise, you will think you failed, but it's just because you weren't concentrating. Like, you have to actually hit good, like, a not RER without technical failure. You have to, like, and you know this, like, every ounce of you is like, fuck, I've got another rep, but I have to think about this so carefully that I don't, like, sway here, or what have you. It's like, I can get it. It's just so much has to be locked in. So if people are like, I don't know, they're not concentrating during that set, fully invested in it, and they're switching off or whatever, like, they just go through it and they're like, oh, that felt off, I'm stopping here. So,
if you were to record yourself and you switch around kind of the order of how the video is run, so kind of in reverse order, and the facial expression from the last repetition is basically the same as the first repetition, then something, in my opinion, is off. And that is independent of the exercise. Even on something like curls, for example, man, I'm fighting, and you can see this in my face. And it's not that I do this in order to impress others or to pretend as if I'm fighting. It's just like I'm in the moment and I'm trying to actually get something out of this.
Yeah. And my face goes tomato.
Yeah.
Always. Because I'm like, even on curls
something
or
like
something.
this, or kind of, I don't know, the veins that pop out on your neck and all that kind of stuff. So you should be able to tell from the outside. And I think that this is kind of also a good cue for you to, or kind of an indicator when you film yourself, like, did that look like, just from the outside, try to be as objective as possible. From the outside, did that really look like a challenging set, or was it more like a warm-up set? This is not rocket science. And some people sometimes make it to be something like rocket science. Well, these are two kind of separate things. Right? The science, where then people are looking at things, and then the execution of movements. They can come together for sure, but I think when it's time to go in there and apply those things, you still need to bring the heat. It's like Ryan Doris brought a very, very good thing of like, you have to bring the heat in order to cook. Right? And
I like that.
Yeah, it was amazing, and that's the thing. Right? You can't cook when you don't really have the heat there. So you need to bring it in order to actually get somewhere.
That's what I always think about, like week 1 of a mesocycle. I think people think of it as an easy week. And in comparison to like a final week, where maybe you're approaching naught RAR or even failing in some instances, it's easy maybe in comparison, or easier is a better description, because we're still trying to grow muscle. So you have to challenge your muscle. If you didn't feel like you challenged a muscle, it didn't stress, it didn't get tired, you are not overloading anything. So it's got to be a hard week, and all it is you train hard, but you know you've left a little bit in the tank. That's as simple as it is. I think people do overthink it, like you said, and they're like, oh God, I don't want to create too much fatigue, I've got to be 4 RAR, and in reality they're like 10. It's like, fuck. And this is where experience just cures it all, and you just go through the system a few times and you've got it nailed. But I think people overthink that first step sometimes.
Absolutely. Let's go into the most desired body part of them all. Can you guess what it is?
Body part? You didn't specify muscle.
Muscle group. I'm not referring to any kind of genitals or so.
What would be the most desired? For me, I'm thinking quads, but it's probably something else for most people.
No.
Back. No, we've done back.
So I have the feeling that for experience or people who have been training for a longer period of time, it's always the quads. Whereas for beginners, it's most of the time arms or
chest.
The chest, exactly. Yes. Let's talk about the chest. So this time, Steve, go ahead and talk a little bit about exercises for the chest.
Cool. So, yeah, for me, again, I guess similar to I'll boil it down to the hamstrings, like what the chest does. And I don't think I can actually say this in biomechanics terms, but like bringing the elbows together, essentially like that would be adducting the elbows, I guess, maybe. And then like pressing away from you. So like horizontal pressing, vertical pressing, like pressing away from the body. That's essentially what we're doing. Different angles are going to slightly target different areas of the chest in terms of where they line up with the muscle fibers and stuff. But then like fly movements and pressing movements basically is what I'm trying to say here. Let's like boil it down to just simple chat rather than trying to talk outside of my knowledge base. So in terms of exercises, there's actually like, for me, there's not that many like exercises I would avoid. I find lots of machines work very well for me. Dumbbells, barbells, cables even work really, really well. Some people might say in terms of like if they were looking into the minutiae a little bit, maybe like a dumbbell fly might not be the best because there's not much tension up at the top. So maybe you should use a cable. I think maybe if you're only choosing one, you would choose the cable maybe, but using the dumbbells, you get a huge stretch in that kind of lengthened position, which can be very hypertrophic. So you could rotate that in now and then. And same with like dumbbells and machine work. Like they're complementary probably, where they're like tougher in the stretched position versus the shortened. It's just variation. So if you see what feels best. I don't think you should throw out the barbell. I think barbell can be really productive for some people, maybe not for others. You might argue the dumbbells give you more range of motion, sure. But the barbell, there's just something very stimulative, and raw stimulus magnitude for some people is just like crazy. So yeah, I don't know if I described that well, but I think there's a whole host of productive exercises.
Absolutely. I think this is one of those body parts where you have such a huge variability, and we can just pick and choose from such a wide variety of exercises. And that's the beauty about the chest, for example, right? You can make a lot of things happen. And then it's more a matter of preference and what really feels the best in your chest. So for me personally, whenever I'm doing something like dumbbell presses, it's amazing for the chest, to be honest. It gives me a much, much better pump, even though that kind of the movement pattern is very, very similar to the barbell. And I don't really have the feeling that I'm getting so much more range of motion out of the dumbbells than with the barbell. Maybe it's like 1 or 2 centimeters, but at some point the range of motion in your shoulder joints is also limited. And if I just do it in a natural manner like this, I can already feel that this is my max point, which is kind of chest height already. Right? If I go any further than this, I'm probably losing out on strength and control. But of course, so if you're making use of something like the dumbbells, you want to also keep that in mind, why you're picking the dumbbells over the barbell, for example. And if you don't really make use of the dumbbells appropriately, why then go with the dumbbells, right? So the dumbbells allow you for a little bit greater range of motion, but the downside to it is, of course, getting into a proper position. And at some point, you need to get into that higher repetition range, because heavy dumbbell work just, in my opinion, sucks big time. And it just puts you in a very, very dangerous position of actually, when you lean back, fall back, controlling then the weight, right? Most of the time, it's not worth it. And what I found for myself personally is machine-based movements are great, but it really is kind of a fine line. Whenever I'm on a Smith machine and pressing, I feel it very, very much in my shoulders. When I am in a seated chest press machine, though, amazing, the one that I'm using right now, when I use those hammer strength movements, don't really feel it in my chest at all, to be honest. But some people swear by those movements and that these machines from Hammer Strength. So you just have to test around and see what works for you. Also, when it comes to the cable flies, don't be afraid of like experimenting a little bit, pulling from the top to the bottom, pulling from the bottom to top, basically, leaning maybe over, crossing the arms at times. So something that I'm using for the pack deck machine, for example, is I actually get some D handles, wrap it around the pack deck handles, and then actually get into that position, because the pack deck that I'm using has like rubber pads in between. So I'm missing out on that kind of squeezing aspect at the top peak contraction. And it's just a couple of centimeters, but especially when you take into consideration what the chest does, you can really feel it, that difference. And that's why I'm just wrapping around D handles, which allows me that additional movement. What I'm then doing, especially for chest flies, is imagining to actually bring my elbows together. And I think that I've heard it from John Jewett. So one of my athletes, Makoto, brought it up that John Jewett talked about it as a cue of bringing the elbows. So imagining bringing the elbows together instead of focusing on bringing the hands together. Yeah. And that is a fantastic cue, for example. And once again, just a lot of exercises that you can pick and choose from, which then, of course, also kind of dictates the volume, because when you, there are lots of things that go into that. If you are using a lot of flies, for example, you can probably end up with much, much more volume for the chest than if you primarily do like heavy pressing movements, for example. And then also it is very individualized. So you, for example, Steve, you have a fantastic chest. You say that you want to bring it up, but it's still already pretty good. And you get a very good stimulus just from little work, right?
Yeah, I can get like... my chest is very forgiving in terms of rep range, exercises. Like something might irritate my shoulder, but the actual chest, if I can do the movement without irritating my shoulder, I'm going to get an amazing chest stimulus. But recently, at least, like barely been getting any soreness. So I think I've just got to a point where I'm going to be due an active recovery at some point soon, because I think my adaptive resistance is building up in terms, not that soreness is everything, but yeah, I can get like a couple of sets of like a heavy press and I'll get like a major pump like very immediately. And yeah, it's, but for some people it's not that way.
I have the feeling that this is really one of those one of those muscle groups that is correlated with, are you getting a good mind-muscle connection and pump in the chest easily? And if you do, most of the time, it's also a muscle group that is very big and a strong suit of that individual. If not, then most of the time, that individual needs to do a lot of volume, but still end up with not that great of a muscle group.
Yeah, it's funny because, yeah, you mentioned my chest being like a strong point, but it's strong, but it's also weak in some ways. I don't know why. Like on my like front shots and on my like front lat spread, it's not popping. Like that's what held me back a little bit. I think particularly at the WNBF finals, that guy just had an enormous chest. It's like for those shots to look better on me. So maybe like for me in terms of bodybuilding, it's something that I need to bring up to balance my physique better. But actually on my physique is just a standalone, and like in terms of responsiveness to training, it's very responsive. Hopefully that means therefore if I really am prioritizing it more, it's going to come up a lot, but we'll see. Because it's funny because my back, like I don't get amazing responsiveness from training. It needs quite a lot of volume, but it's actually like become to be one of my stronger like poses. But that might be partially related to just my physique in general, like how it's put together. Like my rear double biceps, arguably one of my strongest, but that might not be down to the fact that my back is so well developed. It's just as the way I'm put together, it just it works out to be that way. Don't know if that makes sense. It's like specific bodybuilding genetics versus muscle growth genetics.
What I found in terms of volume is that here the volume recommendations are pretty much the general recommendations that many people spit out of like 10 to 20 sets.
Sure.
That is kind of a very good starting point for that specific muscle group. I have the feeling. I have hardly ever seen anyone who only needs like 8 sets or so. Very rarely. And hardly ever seen anyone needing more than 20, but it could very well be very close to it, where it's like, I don't know, even 7 sets in the first week. In one single session already, and that 2 times per week. And that as a starting point, right, could easily be the case. And then sometimes even ramping up from there, where it's like sometimes even bringing it up to a frequency of 3 times with then kind of 6 sets per session or so can be something some people need and respond well to.
Yeah, I'd say my like standard is probably 2 times a week. 4 to 5 sets per session, so anywhere from starting volumes of like 8 to 10 tends to be most people's starting point. But some people, like you said, they just need much more than that, so up to like 6-7 sets per session, up to like 3 times per week. And then the volumes, like you said, can move up to certainly the high teens. Most people can handle more than 15 sets, up to like 20s, like for sure.
Yeah, and this is one of those body parts as well that I think has a very good response of 2 to 3 times of training per week. Even 3 times, I feel it's not overdoing things. Most of the time, people are more so than responding in a way of shoulder pain when you're pressing too often. This is where I think that flying movements come in quite handy, so that you have the vast majority of volume coming then from fly variations instead of pressing variations, or having a very well distributed amount of volume on those body parts, or coming from those exercises. Sorry for that. But once again, I think that I'm just thinking like whether I had someone who was only pressing like once, but I don't think that I've ever had that, to be honest.
No.
2 times is very much the norm, and 3 times is also something that I'm prescribing not that rarely. 4 times, yes, for powerlifting for sure, but we are not talking about powerlifting.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level,
hit the link in the description below.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gone to 4 times, but 2 to 3 for sure. And then I tend to have like more like emphasis on horizontal versus vertical, but it might be like, if they're 3 times, it might be a case of like, we start off with a horizontal emphasis, and then it's more incline emphasis, and then it's like a high incline to almost overhead press emphasis with some flying movements in that session.
Yeah.
So it's almost it's like you've kind of damaged one section of the chest versus towards others. And I didn't mention, and this is something I'm interested to hear your kind of thoughts around, is I think even it's become a little bit, it hasn't been talked about for a while, but for a time it was kind of controversial, was like decline. For a long time when I started, it was like a decline is a no-brainer, but over time I've been much less programming it. I can't actually remember ever programming like a decline, like a proper decline, maybe like a slight decline. I've done it before. Like, I don't know, you can use the flat bench and it has one pin that just lets it go to like a minor, like the tiniest decline. So it's super easy to set up. Yeah. It's almost like you're not declined. But I can't remember the last time I actually programmed like a proper decline press.
Thing is, I was quite vocal about it in the past, but I was just like, I can't see why people would use something like a decline. And I've moved away from that much more so, because also coming from the other direction of like vertical pressing. Just because we know that the vast majority of people, the separation of the chest is not like 50-50, unfortunately, because then it would be very straightforward. But the upper part of the chest is, for most people, only making up a very, very small portion of then the chest. And it's still getting stimulated by horizontal pressing. So normal presses of like dumbbell bench press and stuff like that. So I more so moved away of like really separating it between like vertical pressing and not horizontal pressing. It's more like I just want to make sure to have a well-balanced approach between pressing and flying movements. This is more where I'm laying now my emphasis on, instead of thinking too much about vertical pressing, horizontal pressing. It's kind of nearly the same as something like pulling, but pulling is also, of course, dependent on then the elbow positioning and all that kind of stuff, which it also is a little bit for the chest, but not so much as it is for something like pulling movements. What I want to say though is, if you are pressing normally, so normal horizontal press, you're already making sure that you are engaging a huge amount of just your pec fibers. If you then have like a flying movement in there as well, I think that you are very good to go, and you don't really need to worry about something like decline presses or moving in that kind of plane, or then a vertical pressing movement. Still, you can throw it in there for sure, but I don't think that you need to be overly anal about it. And when it then comes to this, I think that if you then, if you're worried about that, then throw in something like dips, or throw in something like, I don't know, a normal chest press variation where you are a little bit more in a decline position instead of really lying in a decline press bench or so, right? And it's so easy, because what it is that you just need to do is actually put your glutes a little bit more on the edge of the seat, lean back a little bit further, and voila, you're already more so in that decline position if you really want to, right? So I think it's not worth it to be overly focused on the decline bench press itself. If you really want to be, or have like a more so evenly split, do this in that you are using certain machines or certain positions of your body instead of just like the movements itself. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like, maybe people can think about it like this, but I do a prime overhead press, but I'm not doing it to target the anterior delts and the triceps primarily, which people would probably think that's what you're trying to do. But I sit my butt on the edge of the seat, so I'm in like a high incline, so I'm hitting more of that. And I just get the gnarliest stimulus all in my upper chest. Sure, I'm going to hit my anterior delts some and the triceps, but like I'm manipulating that machine to hit what I want, similar to what you said there. And I think it's a way more productive way of your time and energy and safety to use a press and try and use it as a decline, rather than like, one of the big downsides to any decline work is like, it's just torturous to set it up and really, really difficult. So yeah, I'm
and actually, if you get buried on that one, man, you're with your head down. So where does the bar roll to? Of course, towards your head if you're failing. So it is kind of even a dangerous exercise. I don't want to now do any kind of fear mongering, because I don't think that any bodybuilder should be in a range where he's like failing a lift. You should be actually overly confident that you do this. And if you get close to like absolute failure, then get someone who's actually then spotting you, or don't go there. All right. But of course, it could always happen. And being in a decline bench position is not the most or the safest option.
Yeah. It's, what was I going to say? I had something in mind.
Oh, sorry.
Completely forgotten. No, it's all right. One thing I have got in mind is like elbow position. A lot of people will talk about, it was your kind of stance on, like, if you're horizontal pressing, you're probably getting a lot of the chest. And to be honest, when people horizontal press, normally they arch their back a little bit, and that essentially just moves the angle of where the chest fibers are, and you're already getting a lot of the decline fibers, or the lower chest fibers rather, from doing that sort of thing. And like you said, when you dip, inevitably, and like whenever I do dips, I get a gnarly chest pump as well as the triceps. Like I just can't not. There are many ways to go about hitting the chest in that sense. So I think that's well said. And then, the thing I was going to ask about is it's become, I think, more popular for people to think about elbow position, like tucking the elbows to hit more like of the chest. But I kind of I tried it, and then I also tried again flaring, and I'm like, for some things tucking feels better, and for some other things flaring, actually I feel it more in the chest. And again, some biomechanics might be like, it's the sensation, that's a sensation. It's not actually like whatever you should be feeling. I'm like,
that is the same thing that I've experienced as well, to be honest, Steve. Especially like on the chest press machine. I intentionally put my seat like lower so that I'm more so in that angle, because I really could feel like that my pecs are doing more of the work. I can very much relate to that.
I'm the same way on like chest pressing movements. Like it just like stretch, like when I bring my elbows like up there, just like the crazy stretch across the chest. Whereas when I come down here, it just, the stretch is much less. I'm maybe even stronger down there, but that's not necessarily a good thing in terms of like stimulus to fatigue ratio. So,
and because we are already talking about having a huge variety of things to play with, from exercises, from volume, from frequency, rep range is basically the same. I have the feeling that with the chest, you can do a lot of things in terms of repetition ranges and still get a very good response. So you can even go in very, very low repetition ranges and still get a good stimulus for the chest, and also that you're under control of everything. And then also you can even go all the way up to 20, and I have the feeling that this can still result in a very, very good sensation, especially when it comes to metabolite work, doing something like push-ups to cable flies or so, like as a superset. Amazing, right? Amazing. And the repetition range can actually be quite high. You get such a gnarly pump in your chest. So also there, huge variety of repetition ranges that you can play with. It's more than dictated by the exercise itself.
It's one of my favorite supersets is the fly into press. Like it's just
nasty.
So nasty in the best way, because it isn't like quad pumps are also nasty and painful, whereas chest pumps are just like, they're almost just pure pleasure. Like there's no pain about it.
The thing is, you can also very much grind, and you can be assured that the chest is doing the work and not any kind of other body part is taking over.
Yeah, it's, and like if you're doing a press up, for example, failing a press up is like you're completely safe to go and do that, because you're just going to fall on the floor. So there's no issues there. So I'm very much the same for rep range, very wide spectrum. Yeah.
Tips and tricks. I mean, I've already mentioned something on the pack deck, for example, using something like D handles, then also with the elbows together as a cue. Anything that you can think of immediately?
Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, because my chest responds just so well to things.
I can think of another one, and that is kind of not bouncing when it comes to using like exercise, or making sure that you are very much also there. Once you're coming down, that you're actually slowing down the movement and then coming up in an explosive manner, and not just like accelerating on the way down. Rushing. Right? Furthermore, when it comes to fly movements, and this is something that I felt can work quite nicely, and this is something that I've mentioned in the past even, the more you come out and backwards, the more you can bend your elbows. And then once you come forward, then you're straight in the elbows again. Works fantastic, to be honest.
Yeah, this is something, it looks really weird. Like whenever I film myself doing like the machine fly and I'm like back here and people are like, that looks so wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but it feels so right. Yeah. And I can come there and then push it forward. Because if you keep your arm straight, you're essentially just stretching the biceps so much. And for me, especially, it all just goes onto my biceps. So that's a really good point. And the bouncing is a great point because a lot of people, they don't control that eccentric at all, especially with like dumbbells, especially people a little bit less experienced, like all shaky and they come down and they're like shaky on the way up. Yeah. If you're shaking all over the place, you can be pretty sure that tension's not just all driving through the chest musculature. So the only other tidbit I would say is, we mentioned it, is play with like elbow position, like more tucked or less tucked. See kind of where you get the best stimulus for the chest, because it may differ even for exercise.
No, absolutely. Things to avoid. I mean, this is basically something that we've just mentioned of like, try to avoid bouncing and all that kind of stuff. Have control over the movement, basically.
Something I'd say to avoid, and you spoke about it maybe on here or even in a voice message to me, where essentially you saw a lot of people doing a machine press of some sort, and you tried it and you didn't get a good stimulus fatigue ratio. It didn't feel great to you. You didn't stick to it just for the sake of, everyone's doing it. And that's what I would say. So if you're hearing people say the barbell bench press, for example, is a popular one, it's crap for chest. But if it feels really good to you, you're progressing well on it, you're getting a great pump, get great disruption, it's probably a really good exercise for you. So don't kind of get caught up in that sort of thing. And that goes for every single muscle group. So even for what we're saying here, like we have like we said, there's a large range of exercises that are going to work well. Just have an experiment a little bit.
Totally. And I can bring up another example, because on the weekend, I was at a gym where I'm normally just doing my lower body session, and they have like a chest fly machine, like really a fly machine, not just like a pack deck that is then kind of set in also where you're pulling to, right? So on that chest fly machine, you were able to kind of move the handles up and down as well. And back then I was trying it like ages ago, and I simply used way too much load because I was convinced that I'm stronger than I am in that position. And now I know how to do a fly and make it work for me with all of the things that we brought up as well, of like bringing kind of squeezing it at the top, coming down, really bending the elbows, for example. I've tried it and it was such an incredible machine. Whereas back then, when I was trying it, I found it to be a horrendous machine. But I have to admit, now looking back in hindsight, I just didn't know how to incorporate that machine and how to make best use of the tool.
Yeah. I think one more thing I'll say is, similar to like the people saying the barbell bench press is no good, I will most of the time suggest people try and touch the chest as like standardization. So come down, meet the chest, press all the way up. You know, that's a standardized range of motion. I think actually everyone I've worked with, and that's hundreds of people, can do that. But it does seem to be that some people, at least from what I see on the internet, is uncomfortable. They don't have that range of motion. Come to your fullest range of motion. But I think most people can probably come and touch the chest and come to the top. I don't know if you've had a different experience with that, Pascal.
No, not really. What I found though is on the barbell bench press, that once you go up into a higher repetition range, it is actually very stimulating for the chest. But too many people are still too low on the repetition range. That being said though, this is one of those exercises where you can still say, all right, with a quite high amount of confidence that it still works the pecs. All right, but does it work the pecs to the highest extent? And also, is it the best exercise in terms of stimulus to fatigue ratio? Or would it be better to then move over to a different exercise? Because it's the same with squats. If you squat down, you will hit the quads no matter what. You don't need to really be focused on the quads or so. But probably if you don't really feel it in the quads that well, you are maybe not very much made for then the squatting movement. And there are better exercises for you where you can do more work for less fatigue in return. That's often the same thing for bench pressing, I've found.
Yeah, and I think something I thought you were going on to, but I blurted it out and it wasn't. But the same to the squat. It's like people have their ego attached to it. It's like, how much do you bench, bro? Yeah. So if you move away from it, sometimes it's like, you're better able to eat your ego. Because I know I did. It's like, I have to be benching 100 kilos for multiple reps. Otherwise, I'm like a loser or whatever.
Yeah.
So I can detach my ego a little bit when I move away from that lift.
No,
I actually
absolutely.
haven't barbell benched in like a year or something.
I haven't benched in a very long time as well. Maybe I should give it a try.
Freaking strong, man.
I am strong, but this is also one of those things where my triceps isn't the biggest and my chest isn't the biggest. So what's fucking wrong there? I mean,
you got some magic.
I know.
So it's all the anterior delt.
Yeah, maybe I have the strongest anterior delts in the world, but they are also small. I don't know.
Or your range of motion, you just have a massive arch. Actually, your arch isn't crazy.
No, but
cool.
that's it.
Did we cover? All right.
Yeah, Steve, I hope that you had a lovely holiday then. By the time that it comes out, you already had your holiday. So I really do hope that you had a lovely holiday, that you got some,
lots of
chocolate, Easter presents and all that kind of stuff. Had some chocolate. Yeah, don't know. But hopefully you had a lovely time. Guys, as the last time, we've already talked about it, London seminar is closing in on us, right? So the time is ticking. If you want to still participate, still can get some tickets over at revivestronger.com. Head over there. Second day is unfortunately for you sold out. Sorry for that, but of course you can still participate at the first day, and it's still going to be amazing. I can promise you that.
Something you do not want to miss out on. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun.
Or not, but it's still going to be good for your education then.
No, I guarantee it's going to be fun. I will make you have fun at this event. Yeah. No, Mike will probably do that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Cool. Then, guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for tuning in, as always. And I guess I'll speak to you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.